What's up, everyone? I hope you're doing well here. I'm Adrian. Thank you for joining me for yet another World Football Show in the Bleacher Report app or on YouTube. We thank you for joining us. And we also encourage you to drop your thoughts below. Give us your bold predictions for January. They're bold transfer predictions. That is, give us a dream signing for your club. But let's keep it realistic. A dream realistic signing. No Kylian Mbappe to Wolves kind of business. That ain't happening. I mean, I ain't ever seen Kylian Mbappe as a child with Wolves posters all over his bedroom, as we saw with Cristiano Ronaldo. But if you have proof, get at me, of course. But guys, I have five, six transfers that I want to get into here. Some are a little bit bolder than others, but I think that all of them are fairly realistic, that I have reason to believe both parties would be interested in them. So let's get through those now. And we're actually going to start with one that's hot off the presses. This is very, very fresh news, guys. Thiago Silva, of course, is leaving Fluminense. And so now, naturally, there are all sorts of rumors flying around that he will go to Europe next. As you can see from Fabrizio Romano, who is often the insider that gets things correct. He has those connections with agents, with players directly. He usually is very reliable, usually. So, Thiago Silva, we saw him at the Club World Cup this past summer with Fluminense. We saw how effective he can still be right now if he was to go to Europe. Yes, he's 41 years old, but there are few players that have kept themselves in such good condition as Thiago Silva has. You know, we saw Pepe do that for a while for Portugal. There's certain center backs that are able to just maintain this great condition, and Thiago Silva absolutely is one of them right now. So, of course, we're hearing that he could be linked with Chelsea, which is interesting. Look, if he was to come in as a quick signing to sort of help them and have some depth in that back line, provide a little bit of experience, it would be sort of against how Chelsea have been doing things recently. But maybe this is something that Enzo Maresca would want, because their main leader right now is Reece James. He is their main sort of captain and leader in the team, but he's pretty young himself. So to have Thiago Silva in there, we've seen him do well in the Premier League. We saw him win the Champions League with Chelsea also. If he does make this return, I don't hate it. I really don't hate it. He showed again how well he can do in the Club World Cup against European opposition at times, standing up to these much younger players, guys who are half his age or more at times. So I think that if he was to go to Chelsea, it's not like he's trying to make an angle for the Brazilian national team prior to the World Cup or something like that. Who knows? If Ancelotti calls him up, maybe he'll accept the call. But if he was to go to Chelsea, I think that he would just be that sort of experienced head, one of the leaders on the pitch and in the dressing room for Enzo Maresca. Let's see. Let's see what happens. Maybe he wants to go back to a Portugal, or maybe he wants to give Spain a try. He already spent some time in Italy and in France. Maybe he wants to try something new, but the rumor mill is sort of pushing him towards Chelsea. That could be an interesting one. I wouldn't mind seeing that. I wouldn't mind seeing that. I would say that that would be a bold move based on the sort of theme of the show. That would be a bold move for Thiago Silva if he was to go back to Chelsea in the Premier League, the top competition, to see how he fares. Now, we're going to talk about a guy who is less than half Thiago Silva's age. We're going to get into Mr. Kobbie Mainoo and the strange Manchester United saga that just keeps on rolling on. And I have him potentially going to Napoli. This was a kid who was a regular starter for England at Euro 2024. He started in that final against Spain at Euro 2024. But since Amorim took over, because he was also a starter for Manchester United under Eric Ten Hag, since Amorim took over, he's not featured regularly at all. So last summer, it looked like he would leave. There was apparently a conversation he had with the club saying that he wanted to leave on loan. But now there are words of him wanting to leave the club again on loan because, as you can see, he has 11 appearances, just one start under Ruben Amorim at this point. Duels won, 15. And I think that part of the reason why he hasn't been getting a ton of opportunities is because he isn't that defensive midfielder like a Casemiro, and it's not like you're going to kind of switch the formation around just to fit him in ahead of Bruno Fernandes or something like that. Although we have heard rumors of Ruben Amorim and Manchester United working on a 4-3-3 kind of formation to maybe get someone like a Kobbie Mainoo back in there. Now, you saw his brother probably wearing that free Kobbie Mainoo shirt at one of the Manchester United matches, which hasn't really caused a ton of issues as far as I can tell just yet. Hopefully, his brother doesn't go down the road of being a troublemaker like Trent Alexander-Arnold's brother or Alejandro Garnacho's brother, because it's understandable to an extent why Garnacho, the former United player, Kobbie Mainoo isn't really playing as we just went over. But he's still a young man. Time on the bench is not something that he will relish right now, especially ahead of the World Cup that is coming up. So he wants to leave on loan, and I think that Napoli would be the one that would be a great move for him because Conte seems to have this obsession with United players. He wanted Garnacho before as well from United. He has a great track record of sort of developing former United players like Romelu Lukaku at Inter, Scott McTominay at Napoli, turned them both into absolute monsters. He took Rasmus Højlund from United this past summer. He did fairly well, started well there. He's a bit up and down. He also had Matteo Darmian that he took from Manchester United, Ashley Young, Sanchez. So he has this obsession with these United players, and it's still apparently a thing. He kind of wants to bring him in at Napoli now because they have some injury issues, namely Anguissa, who is going to be out for a couple of months yet, I think. And then Billy Gilmore is also injured. They also have Kevin De Bruyne is injured at the moment. Lobotka is injured at the moment. They lost 2 matches in a row. So this is a very important signing, could be a very important signing for them. Kobbie is a player that I think could do well in Serie A. I mean, who would have predicted that Scott McTominay would become the player that he did, the player of the season last season? So the most likely scenario is that United will probably block his transfer as they did in the summer. But I think that they should let him go for his sake to go to Napoli and get that experience under Antonio Conte to see what kind of player comes back to them in the summer of 2026. I think they'd rather tell Napoli that they can have Ugarte instead, but with talks of Spurs and Brighton also being linked with Kobbie Mainoo, I can't really see that happening. I can't see United wanting to help out Brighton and Spurs, teams that are going to be fighting for that final European place, probably Conference League at some point. That, hey, Conference League will be a huge upgrade on what United had last time. So Kobbie Mainoo going to Napoli, I think, could benefit all parties. Again, I think United will want to keep him as a backup rather than Ugarte, but it will certainly benefit Napoli and Kobbie Mainoo. Now, in the chat, we have SLL in the app saying, love Silva, but not with Chelsea in the EPL as previously seen. Lack of pace is significant. Yes, that is probably one of the big things that would be sort of a mark against him making a return to the Premier League, at least for a team that needs to play on the front foot, because that would not be a very good mix. Maybe, you having him at someone like Nottingham Forest in the past, or a team that sits deep and wants to play in transition, maybe Thiago Silva could work out there. Maybe. Dulzai in the app also says, I can see him at one of Portugal's big three or Italy. I could see that working as well. Hey, look, as a Benfica supporter, no, I can't have Otamendi and Thiago Silva playing in the same team. I can't have, a combined age of 70 something as our defensive partnership. But he could play in Portugal still. That is a place he could go to. Pepe did that. He played at Porto for a long time. So that is somewhere he could go. And Lightning Nomad says, hi. Hello, Lightning Nomad. Oof. Why was that a tongue twister for me? But thank you for joining us, everybody. Do continue to leave your comments below. Now, let's get to the next one. Keeping it in Manchester, actually. Manchester United midfielders, the talk won't go away. And now there is some murmurs here and there. I mean, there's murmurs about everyone joining everyone, but of Conor Gallagher of Atletico Madrid potentially joining Manchester United. Former Crystal Palace and Chelsea player. He started really well at Atletico last season. He really endeared himself to the Atletico supporters, but this season he's mainly been a rotational player. He's appeared in every La Liga match. However, he started, I believe, just 3 of them, and in 2 of the, or 4 of them, sorry, and in 2 of those four starts, he was subbed off at halftime. So it's been a little bit limited as far as his appearances compared to last season. Across all competitions, I believe he has just 6 starts in 24 appearances. Now, Manchester United really want another midfielder, as we kind of talked about with the Kobbie Mainoo situation, someone who can fight for Casemiro's place in the team, and of course, eventually be the successor, because Casemiro's contract is up in June of 2026. United, there are some talks of him perhaps getting renewed, but they will not renew him at that salary that he has. Now, how I think this could kind of play out. Now, this tweet says it could be a loan with an option to make it permanent. That absolutely could be something. But since Ugarte has been such a bust for Manchester United in this, since joining them, really, I I think that they could potentially try and use that to sort of tempt Atletico in a sort of a swap, a little bit of a swap going on, because United really need someone next to Bruno Fernandes. It's no secret they want to get a midfielder. They wanted Baleba from Brighton last summer. I think they had a 60 million bid rejected, so they have the money for a midfielder. But I wonder if they would float the idea of sending Ugarte over there and Gallagher in a swap. That could be interesting for them, because then they would still have some cash to bring in another midfield signing or a defender if they so choose. Reason being, Gallagher isn't necessarily a like for like as far as player profile as Casemiro. Gallagher, he played as a defensive midfielder early in his career, but since he's moved up a bit further up the pitch, I think he could do a job in United's midfield. And honestly, I think that Diego Simeone could be interested in a player like Manuel Ugarte. He just seems like that sort of nasty kind of midfielder that Diego Simeone would really relish and would be able to get the most out of. But what Gallagher does bring to the Premier League experience. He brings Premier League experience to the Premier League, which is great for Manchester United. That's invaluable for them. And it's something that is important to this United side that's still sort of in transition, trying to sort of flesh out their squad. You saw them prioritize a couple of Premier League proven signings this past summer. So I think that this could be a bold one. I think that United go for Gallagher this January and they send Ugarte the other way to be Gallagher's sort of immediate replacement for Atletico in their squad, and Gallagher becomes the alternate to Casemiro, or if Bruno is to go down, because he does also excel playing in those more advanced positions, Gallagher that is. And maybe, hey, Mason Mount also plays for Manchester United, so maybe he can convince his old best friend to come over to Manchester also. Now, guys, let's move on to number 3, and I have... Look, this one won't surprise anybody. A guy who's completely unused at his club, Raheem Sterling, and I have him going to Leeds. This is a crazy one to watch happen before our eyes, right? Raheem Sterling was one of the best attackers in the league when he was with Manchester City, when they were in their prime, when they were so dominant in the Premier League, winning Premier League after Premier League after Premier League. He had a mediocre season at Chelsea. His second was better, but once Maresca came through, he was done. Maresca was not interested in the slightest, and just look at the paltry stats that you see there. Maresca refused to play him. He sent him to the bomb squad right away, and then Raheem Sterling was sent on loan to Arsenal. That didn't move the needle at all for him. He didn't look capable of playing at that high level, a top team that is, fighting for the title. It didn't look like he could cut it there. So as things stand, he hasn't played a single minute at Chelsea since Maresca arrived. His last appearance was over 560 days ago. Now, he allegedly turned down a loan move this past summer to Bayern Munich, allegedly. And there are also talks of other Premier League sides that wanted to bring him on, other London teams that wanted to have a run at him, bringing him on loan. One of those teams is, as you can see, Crystal Palace. They might yet go for him again in the January window. But his wages are a big sort of tripping hazard for anyone that is trying to bring Raheem Sterling to their club. Raheem Sterling costs a lot of money weekly, somewhere between 300 and 325,000 pounds a week, which is way too much. So they would need Chelsea to take on some of that burden, especially a team like Leeds. They're not going to be paying Raheem Sterling 325,000 per week. Maybe they would take, a third of his wages and Chelsea pays the rest. But they have to convince Chelsea to do that. But Leeds need attackers. Leeds need attackers big time. They have some injuries in the attack. Calvert-Lewin hasn't really popped off at all. So it could be a marriage of convenience for Raheem Sterling, and Leeds. He brings experience, he brings ability, not the same that he had before. He's lost a step of pace as well, but he could still be of use to Daniel Farke. So take him on loan until the end of the season if you're Leeds. Move Sterling one season closer to leaving Chelsea. And as for Sterling, not only does he play some football, does he get to play some football? Sorry. That would be a treat. But he can carve out some good performances as well. Maybe he can earn himself a move to a team like Fulham if he wants to stay in the Premier League. Or, as Prince said in the chat, and as I have also agreed with in the past, I see him going to Turkey, says Prince. And I've said that previously. He looks like a Galatasaray signing. Or sitting at home, coaching kids and collecting that check, which right now is exactly what he is doing. That is the exact thing that Raheem Sterling is doing in this moment, which is great. You know, he's giving it back to his community, training kids. Speaking of which, I saw a comment in one of his videos where he's training kids, and one of the comments was, whatever you do, don't do what he did in front of goal because the poor guy has regressed in front of goal. That is true. But if he wants to stick in London, then he would, then maybe playing at Leeds will earn him that kind of move in the summer. So right now, maybe drop the ego, get in the trenches with Leeds, show that you can still hang in the Premier League. Now, next up, Mark Gahey. I have him as one of the biggest transfer battles of January. If not January, then he's going to have the pick of the litter in the summer. This man was seemingly on his way to Liverpool, but I have him going to Bayern Munich. I have him going abroad. I have him going abroad. So this is Palace's final opportunity to make some money on him. Liverpool still want him. Man City have joined in, allegedly Real Madrid, but I think that Bayern are going to be the club that he ends up going to for some reason. I just get this feeling. He feels like a Bayern signing. And Bayern Munich have actually had two meetings with Crystal Palace to discuss Mark Gahey. And right now, I mean, you can see he's doing fantastic right now. Those are great numbers for a center back. Absolutely fantastic. But right now, Vincent Kompany has this team playing at an unbelievable rate at Bayern Munich. Kompany has them playing attractive football, but effective football as well. And the center back position at Bayern Munich is not settled, besides maybe Upamecano. He's the only sort of guarantee there, in my opinion. But then you have Jonathan Tah, who's been okay. You have Ito, who's had a ton of injuries and seemingly has really bad luck with injuries. And you have Kim Min-jae, who Bayern have already tried to sell him. They tried this past summer to move Kim Min-jae on. So if Gahey comes in, you can see him fighting with Tah for that spot next to Upamecano. And he seems to absolutely have the ability to defend in the Bundesliga. One of the best defenders in the Premier League, will absolutely suit the Bundesliga just fine, I think. I mean, Eric Dyer went to Bayern Munich and didn't do badly at all. He was a bit of a rotational player. He was a bit of an injury covering player. My God. But he did very, very well, endeared himself to the fans. I think that Mark Gahey would have no issues. Plus, with Kane there, he's excelling. He could maybe get his England teammate Mark Gahey to come. And this Bayern team, they're sort of building towards winning the Champions League at this moment. They're sort of a top two team. Arsenal did defeat them, but I think they're a top two team in Europe right now, number 2 behind Arsenal in this moment. So if he improves if he continues to prove at Crystal Palace just how good he is, I think he can improve even further at Bayern. And I think that he improves Bayern himself. So that's where I see Mark Gahey going. And the final one that I have here, the final defender, actually. I mean, speaking about a lot of defenders here, it feels like, well, I guess 1, 2, and then 2 center midfielders and an attacker. But I have another center back to speak of. So I personally completely forgot about this guy, which is sort of understandable, and it's Nathan Ake, a man who started the 2023 Champions League final. I completely forgot that he was at Manchester City. At this time, he's played about the same amount of minutes as Kusanov for Manchester City. But the thing is, Kusanov has been injured often this season. So Ake has spent pretty much the entirety of the game on the bench 9 separate times in the Premier League alone. three times in the Champions League. His playing time has been relegated to League Cup, where he's playing all 90 minutes of those matches and sometimes captaining Manchester City as the most senior player on the pitch at that time with all the kids. So considering Ake is a relatively regular starter for the Netherlands, he won't want to lose that starting position or that the fight for that starting position leading up to the World Cup. Look, there's 7 appearances for this guy. That's pretty crazy. So I think that he pushes for a move in this January window. If not permanent, then I think on loan with an option to buy. And I say that because his contract is up in 2027. So the summer after next. So that plus his age of 31 in February, it feels like moving on would be in his interest, probably for City as well. Now, Everton feels like the spot for me. They need defenders, and I think that there could be a move on the cards because they apparently tried to sign him last summer. Maybe this time they get it done. David Moyes needs backup in both the center back and left back positions. Ake has been used as a left back quite often, both for club and country, but I think he has this ability to do both, which would be very attractive for David Moyes. Everton are making a big push to get back into Europe at the moment. Surprise out of nowhere, Everton's doing super well. Jared Branthwaite's injury, that complicates things for David Moyes. He's only due back at the end of January, I think. So if all goes well with his recovery, I mean, it's a bad hamstring strain, which he's had in the past. He'll be back at the end of January. They need someone to come in this busy sort of holiday period that the English Premier League clubs have. Ake has won everything with City already. I think he would be open to a different kind of challenge in the Premier League. Plus, no doubt Grealish will wax lyrical about moving to Merseyside. He's had a great run with Everton so far. He's looked rejuvenated. So for me, this works for everyone. I'll hold out for Ake potentially being a cover signing for Mark Gahey. That could happen as well. If Mark Gahey is the first domino to go, then maybe Crystal Palace look to Manchester City's Ake as a potential signing to cover for him. But a move to Everton with how keen they were previously in past times, I think that Ake will take that on and take on that challenge of trying to get Everton back into Europe. Now, Sports Watcher says, okay, but which one of these is most likely to happen? Well, let's go over the list right now and see which one I think is the most likely. Kobbie Mainoo to Napoli. I think that Ruben Amorim has been pretty stubborn in saying that he wants to keep Kobbie Mainoo. It would take some sort of out of character happenings like going on strike for Kobbie Mainoo to make that move happen, to force it through. So that one's a little less likely for me. Conor Gallagher. People are saying he might go on loan. I'm saying the Ugart switch maybe would be something that both sides would be interested in. Maybe not that one. But Raheem Sterling to Leeds. I think that Raheem Sterling is not in any position to be picky at this moment. I think that he is... I assume he's dying to get back into playing Premier League football again because he certainly didn't get much at Arsenal on loan last season. He hasn't had a sniff of it since Maresca arrived at Chelsea. So I think that he won't be too picky and he'll want to get back to playing Premier League football. So I think that that one could be likely. Mark Gahey is the one that's difficult because he was basically nailed on to go to Liverpool. I think that Liverpool will really push to sign him. And it will be a question of, does he want to go to Bayern, where he has a strong chance of winning trophies, or does he want to continue in the Premier League and continue to stay in England? I think that's a little less likely than Raheem Sterling. And Nathan Ake to Everton, that's the other one that I think is the most likely at this point because he is playing so few minutes at this time and Everton have been keen on him. So I would say the most likely Raheem Sterling to Leeds. That's the one that I think will happen, which is crazy to think of Raheem Sterling at Leeds. If you were to go back just a few years ago, would never have pictured that playing at an relegation embattled team. That is pretty crazy. But guys, that is the list. That's it for this topic. I want to thank everyone who joined us. Big thank you to everyone who dropped their comments in the chat. It's always, 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 always appreciated. Look, this weekend is the final weekend of football for quite a few of the European countries. You know, the Premier League teams roll on, of course. Those guys never get a break. So enjoy this weekend. We'll have another show for you before Christmas. But if we don't see you, have a great holiday season. Be well, guys.